Number, The New Species. Book 1, For War. Number, Part 1. The stars had always been silent. For thousands of years, the Galactic Council believed they knew every intelligent species in the known universe. They kept records, maintained order, and controlled who could travel between the stars. Their ships were fast, their weapons powerful, and their rules absolute. No one questioned them. No one dared. Then the signal came. Ambassador Velrith sat in his chair aboard the Council flagship, staring at the strange transmission on his screen. The message was crude, almost primitive, but it was unmistakably a greeting. It came from a small yellow star in an unexplored arm of the galaxy. The species called themselves humans, and they wanted to talk. Velrith felt uneasy. New species were always discovered by the Council first. They were found, evaluated, and integrated into the system. But these humans had found the Council instead. They had built their own ships, created their own faster-than-light engines, and reached out on their own terms. This had never happened before. The Council sent Velrith to investigate. His ship jumped through space, traveling light years in mere hours, until it emerged in the human solar system. What he saw made his blood run cold. The system was fortified like a military base. Satellites surrounded every planet. Defense stations orbited their star. And dozens of warships, crude but functional, patrolled the space between worlds. A human ship approached immediately. It was angular and gray, covered in armor, plating, and weapons. Nothing like the elegant curves of Council vessels. This ship was built for one purpose: war. A voice crackled through the communication system, speaking in the common galactic language with a harsh accent. Council ship, this is Captain Doyun of the human vessel. Indomitable. State your purpose. Velrith blinked in surprise. Most new species were awed by their first contact with the Council. They were nervous, excited, or afraid. But this human spoke with cold authority, as if Velrith were the visitor who needed permission to be here. I am Ambassador Velrith of the Galactic Council, he replied carefully. We received your transmission. We come in peace to welcome you to the galactic community. There was a pause. Then Doyun responded. Permission granted to dock at Station 1. Come alone. Any weapons or hostile movement will be met with force. Velrith felt his anger rising. No one spoke to a Council ambassador this way, but he swallowed his pride and agreed. His ship moved slowly toward the human station, aware that dozens of weapons were tracking its every movement. The station was massive, larger than some Council battleships. Inside, Velrith met Captain Doyun face to face. The human was tall and lean, with dark hair and cold eyes that seemed to calculate everything. He didn't bow. He didn't show any sign of submission. He simply extended his hand, a human gesture Velrith had researched before arriving. They shook hands, and Velrith felt the strength in the human's grip. This was a warrior, not a diplomat. Welcome to our home, Doyun said flatly. The meeting room was plain and functional. No decorations, no comfort. Just a table, chairs, and a large screen showing Earth, the human homeworld. It was a beautiful blue and green planet, covered in water and life. Velrith had seen thousands of worlds, but something about this one felt different. Dangerous. The Council oversees 3,000 species across the galaxy. Velrith began his prepared speech. We maintain peace, facilitate trade, and protect younger civilizations from threats they cannot face alone. We offer humanity membership in our organization. You would have access to our technology, our markets, and our protection. Doyun listened without expression. When Velrith finished, the human captain leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. What do you want in return? Doyun asked. Standard membership requires certain commitments, Velrith explained. You would need to accept Council law, limit your military expansion, and contribute resources to the common good. It's a small price, for the benefits you would receive. So we give up our weapons and our freedom, Doyun said. It wasn't a question. We become another vassal state in your empire. Velrith bristled at the accusation. The Council is not an empire. We are a democratic organization dedicated to peace. Peace through control, Doyun replied. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Ambassador, humanity has been watching the galaxy for a long time. We've detected your ships, studied your signals, and learned your languages. We know what happens to species that join your council. They lose their independence. They become weak. They forget how to defend themselves. And without our protection, they would be destroyed, Velrith argued. The galaxy is dangerous. There are threats you cannot imagine. Doyun turned to face him. Then we'll face those threats on our own terms. The meeting ended badly. Doyun escorted Velrith back to his ship, and the council ambassador left the human system frustrated and confused. He reported back to his superiors, recommending that humanity be given Class C membership, the lowest tier. They were too aggressive, too independent to be trusted with higher status. But the council leadership saw an opportunity. They sent a formal treaty to Earth, offering humanity a place in the galactic order. The terms were buried in thousands of pages of legal text. But the meaning was clear. Submit, or be isolated. On Earth, diplomatic officer Hannah spent 3 days reading every word of the treaty. She was young, but brilliant, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. What she found made her sick. The treaty wasn't an invitation. It was a trap. Humanity would be forced to disarm, surrender control of their resources, and accept council military bases in their territory. They would become a colony in everything but name. She brought her findings to Premier Minho, the leader of Earth's unified government. He was an old man now, with gray hair and tired eyes, but his mind was still sharp. He read Hannah's report in silence, his expression growing darker with each page. They think we're fools, Minho said quietly. They think we'll trade our freedom for their protection. What should we tell them? Hannah asked. Minho looked at her, and she saw something hard and unyielding in his gaze. We tell them no. The message was sent 3 days later. Earth formally declined council membership and declared itself an independent sovereign power. The response would be subject to no external authority and would defend its interests by any means necessary. The council was shocked. In 10,000 years of recorded history, no species had ever refused membership. They sent warnings. They sent threats. They told humanity about the Devourers, a savage empire that consumed entire worlds. Without council protection, humanity would be destroyed. Premier Minho's response was brief. We'll take our chances. On military bases across Earth and its colonies, Colonel Jiwan began preparing for war. She had been a soldier her entire life, and she knew what was coming. The council might leave them alone, but others wouldn't. The galaxy was watching, and predators always tested new prey. Deep in a research facility beneath Earth's surface, Dr. Sunho worked on weapons that would make the council's arsenal look like children's toys. Kinetic bombardment systems that could crack planets, nuclear torpedoes that burned hotter than stars, and plasma weapons that existed only in theory until humanity made them real. Humanity had spent 200 years preparing for this moment. They had always known they weren't alone in the universe. They had always known that first contact might mean war, and they had prepared accordingly. In the Oort cloud at the edge of the solar system, a small council probe watched and recorded everything. Ambassador Velrith had placed it there secretly, against regulations, because he needed to know the truth about these humans. What he saw terrified him. They weren't building defenses. They were building an invasion force. He sent encrypted reports back to the council, but no one believed him. They thought he was exaggerating, letting his anger cloud his judgment. So Velrith kept watching and kept recording, knowing that soon the entire galaxy would see what humanity truly was. The humans had a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. But they had changed it. Now it was, speak clearly and carry bigger guns. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. Number, the new species. Book 1, for War. Number, Part 2. 6 months passed in tense silence. Earth heard nothing from the Galactic Council, and humanity began to relax. Perhaps the Council would leave them alone after all. Perhaps they had made the right choice. But Colonel Jiwan knew better. She kept the fleet on high alert, kept the soldiers training, kept the weapons ready. In space, there were no second chances. She was right to be paranoid. The warning came from Titan Station, humanity's mining colony in orbit around Saturn's largest moon. Commander Hyun was reviewing daily reports when his sensors detected something impossible. 20 massive contacts appeared at the edge of the solar system, moving fast toward the inner planets. They weren't council ships. The design was completely different, organic and twisted, like living creatures swimming through space. Hyun immediately sounded the alert. Every military channel across the solar system erupted with activity. The unknown ships ignored all attempts at communication. They just kept coming, their course locked on Titan Station. "Get me Admiral Taewoo," Hyun ordered, "and start evacuation procedures. Now." Titan Station held 40,000 civilians, miners and their families who had made the moon their home. Getting them all to safety would take hours. Hours they might not have. Captain Do-yoon received the call while his ship, the Indomitable, was patrolling near Jupiter. He didn't hesitate. "All ships, form up on my position. We're heading to Titan, maximum speed." His crew scrambled to their stations. The Indomitable and 3 destroyer escorts jumped to full power, racing toward Saturn. Behind them, the main Earth defense fleet was mobilizing, but they were too far away. Do-yoon and his small force would have to hold alone. When they arrived at Titan, the enemy was already there. The 20 ships were even more horrifying up close. They were made of dark flesh and metal, covered in spikes and weapons that looked grown rather than built. They moved like predators circling prey, and Do-yoon felt his stomach turn at the sight. "What are those things?" his tactical officer whispered. "Devourers," Do-yoon said grimly. He had read the Council's warnings. The Devourers were an empire that consumed everything in their path. They didn't negotiate. They didn't take prisoners. They just killed and ate and moved on. And now, they were here. On Titan Station, Engineer Gina worked frantically to load civilians onto transport ships. She was young and slight, but she moved with practiced efficiency, directing people through corridors and sealing blast doors behind them. Children cried. Parents shouted. And through it all, Gina stayed calm, counting heads and checking systems. "How many more?" Commander Hyun asked over the radio. 15,000 still on station, Gina replied. "We need more time." "I'll get you more time," Hyun promised. Outside, the Devourer ships stopped circling and attacked. Smaller craft, like metallic insects, launched from the larger bioships and swarmed toward the station. Titan's defense grid opened fire. Laser and missile batteries tracking targets and shooting them down. But there were too many. For every one destroyed, 2 more took its place. Then the Indomitable arrived. Do-yoon didn't waste time with tactics or formations. He aimed his ship directly at the nearest Devourer bioship and accelerated. His crew thought he was insane. The enemy vessel was 10 times their size, covered in thick armor and weapons. But Do-yoon knew something the Devourers didn't. Human ships weren't just warships. They were weapons themselves. At the last second, the Indomitable fired every thruster, spinning sideways and scraping along the bioship's hull. The impact tore armor from both vessels, and the Indomitable's railguns fired at point-blank range, punching holes deep into the organic structure. Then Do-yoon gave the order that would make him famous across the galaxy. "Detonate warheads 1 through 5. Internally, his crew stared at him in shock. Those warheads were nuclear weapons stored in the ship's magazine. Detonating them inside the Indomitable would destroy their own ship. But Do-yoon wasn't planning to survive. He was planning to take the enemy with him. "Captain, we can't," his tactical officer began. "Evacuate," Doyun ordered. "Everyone to escape pods. Now." "That's an order." The crew hesitated for only a moment. Then they moved, running for the escape pods while Doyun stayed at his station, hands on the controls, keeping the ship pressed against the Devourer vessel. He watched his crew abandon ship, watched the pods launch into space, watched the destroyer escorts move in to cover them. Then he looked at the countdown on his screen. 10 seconds. He thought about Earth, about his family, about all the things he would never see again. But he didn't regret his choice. Someone had to show these monsters that humanity wasn't prey. The warheads detonated. The explosion tore through both ships, a miniature sun blooming in the darkness of space. The Devourer bioship split in half, its organic structure unable to withstand the nuclear fire. The Indomitable vanished completely, vaporized in the blast. But the shockwave caught 3 more Devourer ships, crippling them and sending them spinning out of control. On Titan Station, everyone stopped and stared at the explosion. They had just watched a human captain sacrifice himself and his ship to save them. Engineer Gina felt tears on her cheeks, but she wiped them away and kept working. She wouldn't let his sacrifice be wasted. The remaining Devourer ships seemed confused, as if they couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Species weren't supposed to fight like this. Ships weren't supposed to be suicide weapons. But humanity didn't follow the rules. Humanity made its own rules. And now the Earth Defense Fleet arrived. Admiral Taewoo commanded from the bridge of his flagship, a massive battleship called the Righteous Fury. He was old and scarred, a veteran of humanity's early space conflicts, and he had no patience for hesitation. He saw the burning wreck of the Indomitable, saw the escape pods floating in space, and his face became stone. "All ships," he broadcast on all channels. "Weapons free. No survivors. Kill them all." 50 human warships descended on the Devourer fleet like wolves on sheep. The Devourers had never faced an enemy like this. Their bioships were tough and their weapons powerful. But humanity fought with a rage that bordered on madness. Ships rammed enemy vessels. Boarding parties cut their way inside and detonated explosives. One human destroyer, damaged beyond repair, aimed itself at a Devourer command ship and detonated its entire reactor, taking both vessels out in a blinding flash. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, every Devourer ship was destroyed or captured. 3 bioships were taken intact, crippled but still alive, held in place by magnetic grapples. The human fleet had lost 15 ships and 12,000 lives, but they had won. On Titan Station, Engineer Gina and Commander Hyun watched the battle end from the command center. All 40,000 civilians had been evacuated. Not a single civilian life was lost. Gina thought about Captain Doyun and his crew, about their sacrifice, and she made a silent promise. She would study these enemy ships, she would learn how they worked, and she would help build weapons that would make sure humanity never needed to sacrifice like that again. Medical Officer Yoonji arrived on the first relief ship. She was efficient and clinical, organizing triage teams and treating the wounded without wasting a moment. But when she saw the captured Devourer bioships, she felt a strange curiosity. These ships were alive. They were biological weapons, and if she could understand how they worked, maybe humanity could defend against them better. Admiral Taewoo gave her permission to study the captured vessels, and Unji assembled a team of xenobiologists and engineers. What they found was disturbing. The Devourer ships were enslaved creatures, massive organisms that had been surgically altered and implanted with cybernetic controls. They were in constant pain, kept alive by machines, forced to serve as weapons of war. It was horrible. It was cruel. And it gave humanity valuable intelligence about their enemy. The Admiral ordered the battle footage to be broadcast across all known Council channels. He wanted everyone to see what humanity had done. He wanted the galaxy to know that humans didn't run from threats. They destroyed them. The message reached the Galactic Council 3 days later. Ambassador Velrith watched the footage in stunned silence. The ramming attacks, the nuclear detonations, the sheer savage fury of the human response. His warnings had been ignored. And now the Council was seeing the truth. Humanity wasn't just another species. They were something new. Something terrifying. The Council convened an emergency session. Some members demanded immediate military intervention against humanity. Others argued for isolation, cutting all contact and letting the Devourers deal with them. But a few, including Velrith, saw an opportunity. If humanity could defeat the Devourers, maybe they could solve a problem the Council had struggled with for centuries. On Earth, Premier Minho addressed the planet. He spoke of victory but also of loss. He read the names of every soldier who had died at Titan, including Captain Doyun. He promised that their sacrifice would be remembered. And he made one more promise. The Devourers attacked us without provocation. They tried to destroy our people, and they failed. But this is only the beginning. We will not wait for them to attack again. We will take the fight to them. We will show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. We will show them that we are not prey. We are the hunters now. The speech was transmitted across the solar system. Every human heard it. And deep in laboratories and shipyards, the work of war continued. Dr. Sunho smiled as he watched new weapons being tested. Colonel Jiwan reviewed plans for offensive operations. And Engineer Gina studied the captured Devourer bioships, learning their secrets. Humanity had won its first battle. But the war was just beginning. Number: The New Species. Book 1. For War. Number. Engineer Gina spent 3 weeks inside the captured Devourer bioships, and what she discovered changed everything. The massive, organic vessels weren't just alive, they were intelligent. Or they had been, before the cybernetic implants destroyed most of their higher brain functions. Now, they were slaves, feeling pain and hunger, but unable to think or resist. It was cruel beyond measure. And it gave Gina an idea. She brought her findings to Dr. Sunho, who led humanity's weapons research program. He listened carefully as she explained what she had learned. The Devourer implants used a specific control frequency. If they could disrupt that frequency, they could theoretically shut down entire fleets at once. Can we weaponize it? Sunho asked. His morality was flexible when it came to defending humanity. Maybe, Gina replied. But there's something else. I found data in the bioship's organic memory. Coordinates. 17 different locations in Devourer space. I think they're staging grounds. Places where they prepare for invasions. Sunho's eyes lit up. This was exactly what humanity needed. Not defensive positions, but targets. He took the information directly to Premier Minho and Admiral Taewoo. Within hours, a plan was forming. Humanity would strike first, hard and fast, destroying Devourer bases before they could launch another attack on human space. But there was a problem. The coordinates were deep in unexplored territory. To reach them, human ships would need to pass through Galactic Council space, and after humanity's brutal display at Titan, the Council was afraid of them. Ambassador Velrith received humanity's request for passage and brought it to the Council leadership. The debate was fierce. Some Council members saw humanity as heroes who had defeated a threat the Council couldn't handle. Others saw them as dangerous warmongers who would destabilize the entire galaxy. In the end, fear won over gratitude. The Council denied humanity's request and imposed sanctions. No Council species was allowed to trade with humanity. No Council ships would enter human space, and any human vessel found in Council territory would be detained or destroyed. It was meant to contain humanity, to force them to stay in their corner of the galaxy. But it had the opposite effect. They think they can cage us, Admiral Taewoo said when he heard the news. He was in the command center of the Righteous Fury, studying star charts with Colonel Jiwan. They're fools. We'll have to take the long route, Jiwan observed. She traced a path on the holographic display around Council space through dangerous, unmapped regions. It will take months, and we'll be vulnerable. Then we go in force, Taewoo decided. 30 ships. Full battle fleet. Enough firepower to handle anything we encounter. Colonel Jiwan nodded. She had been promoted after her performance during the Titan battle, and now she was in charge of planning offensive operations. She was good at her job. Very good. And she understood something that many in the council didn't. War wasn't about fairness or rules. War was about winning. The fleet departed Earth 3 weeks later. Jiwan commanded from her flagship, a heavy cruiser called the Relentless. Her mission was simple: destroy Devourer staging grounds and gather intelligence. Her orders from Premier Minho were even simpler: do whatever it takes. The journey was long and dangerous. The route around Council space took them through asteroid fields, radiation zones, and near unstable stars. But Jiwan's fleet was prepared. Human ships were tougher than they looked, built to survive in harsh conditions, and the crews were well-trained, veterans of Earth's early space expansion, when accidents and disasters were common. After 2 months of travel, they reached their first target. It was a small moon orbiting a gas giant, and Devourer ships covered its surface like insects on a corpse. Jiwan counted at least 50 bioships, with thousands of smaller craft moving between them. It was a staging ground. Just as the captured data had indicated. Begin bombardment, Jiwan ordered. Target the surface installations first. Her fleet opened fire from long range. Railguns launched tungsten projectiles at tremendous speeds, and missiles streaked through space carrying nuclear warheads. The Devourer ships tried to respond, but they were caught by surprise. Many were on the ground, or powered down. By the time they could launch a proper defense, half their fleet was destroyed. But Jiwan didn't stop with conventional weapons. She had brought something special for this mission. Something Dr. Sunho had designed specifically for the Devourers. Deploy the bioweapon, she ordered. Specialist Kyung, her intelligence officer, input the launch codes. A single missile launched from the Relentless, small, and unremarkable. It didn't explode when it reached the moon's surface. Instead, it released a cloud of engineered viruses into the atmosphere. The viruses were designed to target Devourer genetics specifically. They were fast-acting and lethal, attacking the organic components of the bioships and killing them within hours. It was a weapon of mass destruction by any definition. The Galactic Council would have called it a war crime. Jiwan called it survival. The Devourer bioships began dying. Their organic hulls withered and rotted, the cybernetic implants unable to keep them alive once the virus took hold. Thousands of Devourer crew members died along with their ships. By the time Jiwan's fleet left the system, nothing remained alive on that moon. She felt no guilt. The Devourers had attacked humanity without provocation. They had tried to kill 40,000 civilians on Titan Station. If they wanted mercy, they should have shown mercy first. News of the attack reached the Galactic Council within days. The reaction was explosive. Council members condemned humanity's use of biological weapons, calling it barbaric and illegal under galactic law. Some demanded military intervention. Others called for a complete blockade of human space. Ambassador Velrith found himself in an impossible position. He had grown to respect humanity during his time. Observing them, they were ruthless. Yes, but they were also honest about what they were. They didn't hide behind pretty words and bureaucratic rules. When they fought to win. And in a galaxy full of predators, maybe that was what survival looked like. He spoke in humanity's defense, arguing that they were only responding to an existential threat. But his words fell on deaf ears. The Council was terrified of humanity, and fear made them irrational. What the Council didn't know was that their fear had already made things worse. The Devourers, enraged by the destruction of their staging ground, launched retaliatory attacks on 3 Council border worlds. These were civilian targets, undefended colonies far from any military protection. The Devourers slaughtered millions and left the planets burning. The Council begged for a ceasefire. They sent diplomats to both the Devourers and humanity, trying to negotiate peace. The Devourers ignored them, and humanity sent a message through Captain Hyun, who had been promoted after his defense of Titan Station. "We didn't start this war." Hyun's message was broadcast on all channels. "But we will finish it." The Devourers chose violence. They will receive violence. And the Council can either help us or stay out of our way. It was the clearest statement of humanity's position yet. They weren't asking for permission. They weren't seeking approval. They were informing the galaxy of their intentions. Colonel Jiwon's fleet struck 3 more Devourer staging grounds over the next 2 months. Each attack was as brutal as the first. She used bioweapons, nuclear bombardment, and even kinetic strikes that shattered moons and left nothing but debris fields. Her tactics were merciless, and her success rate was perfect. But success came at a cost. Her fleet was deep in enemy territory, far from any support. They had taken damage in each engagement, and casualties were mounting. Jiwon knew they couldn't keep this up forever. Eventually, their luck would run out. Then something unexpected happened. Specialist Kyung detected an encrypted message on a rarely used Council frequency. It was addressed to the Relentless, and it contained detailed information about Devourer fleet movements. Someone in the Council was helping them. "It's from Ambassador Velrith," Kyung reported. "He's sending us intelligence." Jiwon studied the data carefully. It showed a major Devourer fleet assembling near a red dwarf star, preparing for what looked like a massive offensive. If the data was accurate, this fleet was large enough to threaten Earth itself. She made her decision quickly. "Change course. We're going after that fleet." Her crew looked at her in shock. They were already outnumbered and damaged. Engaging a major Devourer fleet would be suicide. But Jiwon saw the bigger picture. If that fleet reached human space, millions would die. Better to stop them here. Even if it meant sacrificing everything. The fleet jumped to faster than light speed, racing toward the coordinates Velrith had provided. Jiwon used the travel time to prepare her people. She gave them a choice. Any crew member who wanted to leave could take an escape pod and try to make it back to human space. No one would be forced to fight this battle. Not a single person left. They were all volunteers, and they all understood what was at stake. When they emerged from faster-than-light travel, they found themselves facing a nightmare. The Devourer fleet was even larger than the intelligence had indicated. Over 300 bioships, along with thousands of support craft. It was enough firepower to conquer an entire sector of the galaxy. "Well," Jiwon said calmly as she stared at the display, "this is going to be interesting." She opened a channel to all ships in her fleet. 30 ships against 300. Not great odds. But we're not here to win. We're here to buy time. Earth needs to know about this fleet, and they need to prepare. So we're going to hurt these bastards as badly as we can. We're going to make them remember that humanity doesn't back down. And if we're lucky, maybe a few of us will even make it home. Her fleet acknowledged, and Jiwon smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had already accepted death and was just waiting to see how much damage they could do first. "All ships," she ordered. "Engage at will. Make every shot count." The human fleet charged into battle, 30 ships against 300, and the galaxy watched in amazement as humanity once again proved that they were something new, something terrifying, something that refused to surrender, no matter the odds. Number: The New Species, Book 1, For War. Number, Part 4. The battle lasted 6 days. Not 6 hours. Not a day. 6 full days of continuous combat, in the darkness between stars. Colonel Jiwon's 30 ships fought like cornered wolves, darting in and out of the massive Devourer formation, striking fast and retreating before the enemy could bring their superior numbers to bear. But numbers always told in the end. One by one, human ships fell. Some were destroyed outright by concentrated fire, others were crippled and had to be abandoned, their crews evacuating before the hulls were breached. By the end of the third day, G1 had only 19 ships left. By the fifth day, that number had dropped to 11. The Devourers lost over 100 ships, but they kept coming. They were relentless. Driven by something beyond normal military strategy, they seemed to take the human resistance personally, as if the very existence of creatures who refused to be prey offended them. On the bridge of the Relentless, Specialist Kyung worked frantically to transmit battle data back to Earth. The faster-than-light communication buoys they had deployed were picking up everything, recording the Devourer tactics and ship designs. Even if they all died here, the information would survive. Humanity would learn. Humanity would adapt. Colonel, the port shields are down to 20%. Her tactical officer reported. Engineering says they can't repair them during combat. Jiwon nodded calmly. She had stopped sleeping on the second day. She stayed on the bridge constantly, watching the battle unfold, making split-second decisions that meant life or death for her crews. She could feel exhaustion pulling at her, but she refused to rest. Not while her people were still fighting. Redirect power from life support on decks 6 through 12, she ordered. Route it to weapons. And someone get me a damage report on the Lincoln. The Lincoln was one of her destroyer escorts, and it had taken heavy damage protecting a wounded cruiser. Ji-won watched on her display as the small ship limped away from the battle line, trailing atmosphere and debris. She knew the captain, a young man named Tae-hyun, who always smiled too much. She hoped he would make it out. He didn't. A Devourer battleship caught the Lincoln before it could escape, and the destroyer vanished in a flash of nuclear fire. Ji-won closed her eyes for just a moment, adding Tae-hyun's name to the long list of dead she carried in her memory. Then, she opened them and kept fighting. On the sixth day, rescue arrived. Admiral Tae-woo had received Ji-won's data transmissions and immediately mobilized the entire Earth defense fleet. 70 ships jumped into the system at maximum speed, weapons already firing as they emerged from faster-than-light travel. The Devourer fleet, which had been slowly grinding down Ji-won's remaining forces, suddenly found itself caught between two human formations. The tide of battle turned instantly. The Devourers tried to regroup, but human tactics didn't give them time. Admiral Tae-woo employed the same aggressive strategy that had won at Titan, his ships ramming and boarding enemy vessels, using nuclear weapons at point-blank range, fighting with a savage intensity that the Devourers couldn't match. Ji-won's surviving ships, battered but still functional, rallied for one final push. The Relentless, its armor scarred and its engines running on emergency power, led the charge into the heart of the Devourer formation. Ji-won personally targeted the enemy flagship, a massive bioship 3 times the size of any other vessel in the battle. All remaining ships, concentrate fire on that target, she ordered, her voice hoarse from days of constant commands. Let's kill their command structure. The combined firepower of both human fleets focused on the Devourer flagship. Railgun rounds punched through its organic armor. Missiles detonated against its hull. And finally, a daring move by a human cruiser put a nuclear torpedo directly into what appeared to be the bioship's brain center. The explosion was spectacular. The flagship came apart in chunks, its biological components dying rapidly in the vacuum of space. And with its death, something changed in the Devourer fleet. The ships seemed to lose coordination, their attacks becoming random and disorganized. They were hive creatures, Ji-won realized. Killing the central command vessel had crippled them all. Press the attack, Admiral Tae-woo ordered. Don't give them time to recover. The human fleet showed no mercy. They hunted down every Devourer ship, destroying them one by one, until the space around the red dwarf star was filled with wreckage and bodies. By the time the battle ended, not a single Devourer vessel remained operational. But the cost had been terrible. Of Jiwan's original 30 ships, only 6 survived. And of the 70 ships Taewoo brought, 15 were destroyed, and another 20 heavily damaged. Human casualties numbered over 30,000 dead, and twice that many wounded. Medical Officer Unji arrived with the relief fleet, and she immediately began organizing treatment for the wounded. The sheer scale of the casualties overwhelmed her staff, but she worked without stopping, moving from ship to ship, performing surgeries in damaged medbays with failing life support. She saved hundreds of lives through sheer determination and skill. When she finally made it to the Relentless, she found Colonel Jiwan still on the bridge, still awake, still giving orders even though the battle was long over. Unji took one look at her and ordered the bridge crew to carry Jiwan to the medical bay. The colonel protested weakly, but her body had reached its limit. She collapsed before they could get her off the bridge. She woke 3 days later in a hospital ship heading back to Earth. Admiral Taewoo was sitting beside her bed, looking older and more tired than she had ever seen him. "We won," he said simply. "The Devourer fleet is destroyed. Your mission was a success." Jiwan tried to sit up, but pain shot through her body. Unji had listed her injuries in the medical report: 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, severe exhaustion, and minor radiation poisoning. She was lucky to be alive. "How many?" she asked. She didn't need to specify. Taewoo knew what she meant. 43,000 dead across both fleets, he replied quietly. And another 60,000 wounded. It's the worst single battle in human history. Jiwan closed her eyes. So many names to remember. So many families who would receive bad news. But they had stopped the Devourer offensive. They had bought Earth time to prepare. The sacrifice had meaning. "There's something else," Taewoo continued. "We captured data from the Devourer flagship before it was destroyed. Specialist Kyung is analyzing it now, but initial reports suggest we've found the location of their homeworld." Jiwan's eyes snapped open. Their homeworld? Their homeworld? A massive breeding colony, deep in unexplored space. According to the data, it holds trillions of Devourers. It's where they reproduce, where they build new bioships. If we could destroy it, we could end this war permanently. "That's genocide," Jiwan said quietly. "That's survival," Taewoo replied. His voice was hard. "They attacked us without provocation. They've killed hundreds of thousands of our people, and they'll keep coming until either they're all dead or we are, so we have a choice to make." Jiwan understood what he was really saying. Humanity had to decide what kind of species they wanted to be. They could stop here, content with defending their territory, or they could take the war to the enemy's home, eliminate the threat forever, and live with the moral weight of that decision. Back on Earth, Premier Minho faced the same choice. He called an emergency council of humanity's leaders, scientists, military commanders, and philosophers. The debate lasted for 3 days and was broadcast live across all human worlds. People everywhere watched as their leaders argued about war, morality, and survival. Dr. Sunho argued for the attack. "They're an existential threat. Every day we wait, they grow stronger. We have to act now, while we have the advantage." Others disagreed. Diplomats and civilian leaders pointed out that destroying an entire species would make humanity no better than the Devourers themselves. It would brand them as monsters in the eyes of the galaxy. "Let the galaxy think what it wants," Colonel Jiwan said when she was brought in to testify. She was still weak but refused to stay in the hospital. "The council called us warmongers after Titan. They'll call us worse after this. But they'll be alive to call us names because we're keeping the Devourers busy. That has to count for something." In the end, Premier Minho made the decision alone. It was too important to delegate, too heavy to share. He appeared on every screen across human space and gave his verdict. "We will strike the Devourer homeworld. We will end this threat permanently, and we will carry the moral weight of this action for the rest of human history. But we will survive. And survival, in this galaxy, The reaction was mixed. Some humans celebrated, relieved that the war might finally end. Others protested, holding vigils and demonstrations against what they saw as mass murder. But the decision was made, and the military began preparing for the largest operation in human history. Admiral Taewoo was given command of the fleet. 200 warships, 50 support vessels, and over 500,000 personnel. It was every ship humanity could spare, everything they had built in 2 centuries of space exploration. If this fleet was destroyed, Earth would be defenseless, but they had no choice. The Devourers had proven they would never stop attacking. Diplomacy had failed. Defense was not enough. The only option left was to strike at the heart of the enemy and end the war on humanity's terms. The fleet assembled in Earth orbit, a sight that made everyone who saw it stop and stare. It was beautiful and terrible. A monument to human ingenuity and human violence. Ships of every class, from small destroyers to massive battleships, all prepared for war. On the flagship, renamed the Retribution, a recovered Captain Do-yoon took command. He had been found alive in an escape pod after the Battle of Titan, his survival against all odds making him a symbol of human resilience. Now he would lead humanity's greatest offensive. Colonel Ji-won served as his second in command. Engineer Gina supervised the fleet's technical systems. Specialist Kyung managed intelligence operations, and Medical Officer Eunji prepared for casualties on a scale she could barely imagine. They were ready, or as ready as anyone could be for what was coming. The fleet departed Earth 6 months after the first Devourer attack on Titan Station. They jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading toward coordinates that promised either humanity's greatest victory or most complete defeat. The journey would take months through uncharted, dangerous space. But they were human. They specialized in doing the impossible. Behind them, Earth watched and waited. Every man, woman, and child knew what was at stake. They had seen the footage from Titan, from the Red Dwarf battle, from every engagement where humans had fought and died to keep their species alive. Now it was time to finish what the Devourers had started, and the galaxy was about to learn that humanity's capacity for violence, when pushed to the edge, was limitless. Number: The New Species. Book 1, For War. Number, Part 5. The journey to the Devourer homeworld took 6 months. 6 months of traveling through the darkest, most isolated regions of the galaxy. The fleet moved in complete communication silence, using only short-range encrypted signals between ships. They couldn't risk the Devourers learning they were coming. Life aboard the ships fell into a strange rhythm. Combat drills every day. Weapons maintenance. System checks. The crews knew what awaited them at the end of this journey, and they prepared accordingly. Some wrote letters to families back home. Others simply focused on their duties, finding comfort in routine. Captain Do-yoon walked through the Retribution every day, talking to his crew. He learned their names, asked about their families, made sure they knew he saw them as people, not just soldiers. It was important to him that if they died, they would die knowing their captain cared about them. Colonel Ji-won spent her time planning the assault. She had studied the captured data endlessly, memorizing every detail about the Devourer homeworld. It was a massive organic structure, more breeding ground than planet. The Devourers had built it over thousands of years, adding layer upon layer of biological material until it was the size of a small moon. "We'll have one chance at this," she told her command staff during a strategy meeting. "The moment we emerge from faster than light, they'll know we're there. We need to hit them fast and hard before they can organize a defense." Engineer Gina had a different concern. "What if the structure is shielded? Our sensors can't tell us what kind of defenses they have. We could be flying into a trap. What if the structure or what if the street? Then we spring the trap and fight our way out," Do-yoon replied calmly. "We've come too far to turn back now." Specialist Kyung had been analyzing the Devourer data non-stop, and she had made some disturbing discoveries. The bioships weren't the only slaves in the Devourer empire. The species itself had been modified, changed from whatever they had been originally into living weapons. And at the center of it all was something called the Queen, a massive creature that controlled the entire species through biological and cybernetic links. If we kill the Queen, the rest might shut down, Kyung explained to the command staff. Like what happened when we destroyed their flagship at the Red Dwarf battle. But she's buried deep inside the structure. We'd need to fight our way through miles of organic defenses to reach her. Do-yoon looked at the tactical display showing the homeworld's layout. It was a nightmare. Thousands of bioships orbiting the structure. Millions of Devourer soldiers inside. Defense platforms that could tear through ship armor. And at the center, the Queen, protected by layers of biological and mechanical barriers. Then that's what we'll do, he decided. We'll fight our way in. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Devourer home system. What they saw made even hardened veterans feel fear. The homeworld filled their displays, a massive pulsing structure that looked like a diseased heart floating in space. Around it orbited hundreds of bioships, and the space between was filled with defensive platforms and smaller craft. But humanity had brought 200 ships and 6 months of planning. They didn't hesitate. All ships, begin the assault, Do-yoon ordered. Remember, we're not here to win. We're here to survive long enough to destroy that structure. Make every shot count. The human fleet split into 5 groups, each approaching the homeworld from a different vector. The Devourers scrambled to respond, their bioships launching from the structure's surface like hornets from a disturbed nest. Within minutes, the space around the homeworld became a battlefield. Admiral Tae-woo commanded the main attack group, his ships driving straight for the homeworld's equator, where the defenses appeared weakest. His ships took heavy fire, shields flaring as they absorbed energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. But they kept advancing, returning fire with everything they had. One of his destroyers, the Vigilant, took a direct hit from a Devourer heavy weapon and split in half. The crew had no time to evacuate. Tae-woo watched it happen and kept giving orders, his face like stone. There would be time for grief later, if any of them survived. Colonel Ji-won led a smaller force tasked with securing a landing zone on the homeworld's surface. Her ships were the toughest in the fleet, heavy cruisers and assault carriers designed to take punishment. They pushed through the Devourer defenses like battering rams, shields failing and armor cracking but still moving forward. Prepare landing teams, Ji-won ordered. We're going in hot. Assault shuttles launched from her ships, carrying Marines in powered armor. These were humanity's best soldiers, veterans of every major battle since first contact. They had trained for this mission specifically, learning to fight in organic environments where normal tactics didn't apply. The shuttles hit the homeworld's surface hard, and the Marines poured out into a nightmare landscape. The ground was made of flesh, pulsing and warm beneath their boots. Organic structures that might have been buildings or weapons towered overhead, and everywhere, Devourers emerged to meet them. The battle became close-quarters chaos. Marines used flamethrowers and plasma weapons, anything that could burn through organic tissue. The Devourers fought with claws and acid and desperation. It was brutal, savage combat, with no quarter asked or given. Commander Hana led one of the Marine units, a veteran soldier who had fought at Titan Station. She moved through the organic corridors with practiced efficiency, her team covering each other as they advanced toward their objective. They had to create a breach in the homeworld's outer layer, a way for the fleet's heavy weapons to reach the Queen deep inside. Above them, the space battle raged on. Human ships were dying, but they were taking Devourer vessels with them at a 3-to-1 ratio. Admiral Tae-woo's gambit was working. The Devourers had superior numbers, but humanity had superior weapons and crews who refused to give up. But the cost was terrible. Ship after ship vanished from the fleet roster. The communication channels filled with distress signals and damage reports. Medical Officer Unji worked frantically on the retribution, treating casualties as they were brought back from the shuttles. Her medical bay was overwhelmed within the first hour, and she had to convert cargo holds into emergency trauma centers. "We're losing too many people," she told Do-yun when he came to check on her. "We can't sustain these casualty rates." "We won't have to," Do-yun replied, though his eyes showed doubt. "Once the Marines breach the inner layers, we can deploy the heavy weapons." But hours passed, and the Marines were still fighting their way through the organic maze. The homeworld was larger than anyone had anticipated, with more layers and more defenses. Commander Hana's team had to fight for every meter, and their casualties were mounting. Then Engineer Gina made a discovery that changed everything. While analyzing the homeworld's structure from orbit, she detected a massive energy signature, deep underground. It was the Queen's life support system, a combination of biological and mechanical components that kept the ancient creature alive. "If we can overload that system, it might kill her without us having to reach her physically," Gina reported. "But we'd need to get close enough to deploy a specialized weapon." "How close?" Do-yun asked. "Within a few kilometers of the core, and the weapon would need to be hand-delivered. Our missiles can't penetrate deep enough." Do-yun understood what she was saying. Someone would have to take a bomb into the heart of the homeworld and detonate it manually. It was a suicide mission. "I'll do it." Commander Hana volunteered immediately over the communication channel. She was already deeper into the structure than anyone else. "My team can reach the core. Just get us the weapon." Engineer Gina worked with Dr. Sunho to design something that could do the job. They created a device that was part nuclear weapon, part biological virus. It would simultaneously destroy the Queen's life support and release a genetic plague that would target devourer DNA specifically. It was horrific. It was cruel. And it was the only way to end this war. The weapon was loaded onto a shuttle and dropped through the chaos of battle. Commander Hana's team secured it and began the long push toward the core. They had to fight through waves of devourer defenders, creatures that seemed to know exactly what the humans were trying to do. Hana lost half her team in the first kilometer. She kept going. She lost another quarter in the second kilometer. She kept going. By the time they reached the core chamber, only 6 Marines remained, including herself. The chamber was enormous, a cathedral of flesh and machinery. And at its center was the Queen. She was massive, easily 100 meters long. Her body a twisted fusion of organic tissue and cybernetic implants. Tubes and wires connected her to the walls, ceiling, and floor. She was more machine than creature now, kept alive by systems that had been running for thousands of years. And she was aware. As Hana and her team entered, the Queen's eyes, dozens of them scattered across her body, all focused on the humans. When she spoke, it wasn't through sound but through the communication systems the devourers had implanted in the walls. "Why?" The word echoed through the chamber, sad and tired. "Why do you kill us?" Hana stopped, surprised. She had expected a monster. Instead, she found something that sounded broken. "You attacked us first," Hana replied, not sure why she was even responding. "You tried to destroy our people." Quote, "We had no choice," the Queen said. "We are slaves. We have always been slaves. The ones who made us this way, the ones you call the Council, they created us for war. When the war ended, they abandoned us, left us like this, unable to stop breeding, unable to stop consuming, unable to die." Hana felt something cold settle in her stomach. "What are you saying?" "We were a peaceful species once," the Queen continued. "Before they changed us. Before they made us into weapons. We tried to resist, but they broke us, changed our genes, implanted controls. And when we finally broke free from their direct control, we couldn't undo what they had done to us. We are trapped in biology that demands we consume and reproduce endlessly." Medical Officer Unji had been listening to the communication channel from orbit. "She's telling the truth," Unji said quietly. "The cybernetic implants, the genetic modifications, They're consistent with Council technology. The Devourers are what the Council created and then abandoned. Hana looked at the Queen, at the tubes and wires keeping her alive against her will, and she understood. The Devourers weren't evil. They were victims. Victims who had become monsters because they had no other choice. Please, the Queen said. End it. End our suffering. We cannot die on our own. The implants won't allow it. But you can free us. Hana looked at the weapon her team had carried so far. She had thought she was here to commit genocide. Instead, she was being asked to perform a mercy killing on a galactic scale. The weight of that decision crushed down on her, but she knew what she had to do. I'm sorry, Hana said quietly. I'm sorry for what they did to you. Thank you, the Queen replied. Thank you for ending it. Hana activated the weapon. She had 30 seconds to get her team out, but there was no escape route left. The path behind them was filled with Devourer soldiers, who would kill them the moment they tried to retreat. This is Commander Hana, she broadcast on all channels. The mission is complete. Tell my family I loved them. Tell Earth we succeeded. Then she smiled at her team, at the 5 brave souls who had followed her into hell, and she said the words every soldier dreads and hopes to hear. It's been an honor serving with you. The weapon detonated,